welcome to In the News for August the 6th, 2021. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
Hi, this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD.
Jeff, good to see you. Good morning. We are not worthy. We're not worthy. We're not worthy. Certainly, we're not worthy of a Steve Jobs autograph. You had some great links on the post today, especially to this little video from, what was this, 2005?
Yeah.
Where Steve Jobs is explaining, it's like Walt Mossberg on stage, I believe, and Steve
Kara
Jobs is
Swisher,
literally, he's literally explaining what podcasts are. And what's funny is that Bill Gates is in the audience. I remember, and Steve Jobs says, how many of you have an iPod? And apparently everybody's hand goes up. And Walt Mossberg says, Bill, do you have your hand up? That was a classic moment here. But this was a great link. 2005. Like, that's 15 years ago, people first started, or at least Steve Jobs maybe, first started talking about podcasts. That's incredible how far we have come today.
Yeah, and the reason for this video was they were adding podcasts to iTunes. They were creating the Apple Podcast Library, which is still what people are using. Even third parties are relying on the Apple library of podcasts. And so Apple sort of really started off, and when Steve Jobs was explaining to people what it was, he said it's like TiVo for radio for your iPad, and he also called it the Wayne's World of radio, which is the reference that you're making. That. So so too funny. But it's fun hearing Steve Jobs take something that is a little complicated, unknown to people, and he just had such an art for describing it in simple terms that instantly make sense and are instantly compelling. It's obviously a loss to not have him with us anymore, but that's one thing that he did very well was presentations.
Just the fact that we still today call them podcasts.
Yeah,
that came from the iPod, right? I remember, in the early days, and I used to listen to Leo Laporte, like I'm sure you did, right? And he would try to say, let's call it netcast, as in internet cast, right? But it never stuck. Everybody always went back to podcast, and that's what we call it today. And we don't even consider that, but it really harkens back to the idea that you would have your iPod and you would listen to these podcasts on the iPod, which is just amazing. Yeah. And the quick reference I made to the Steve Jobs autograph, you linked to this story today. I saw this earlier and I just was laughing so hard. Steve Jobs apparently had a request. When was this? 1983. Somebody wrote a letter or something, requested an autograph from Steve Jobs, and he was very kind to literally, looks like he typed this out, or somebody typed it out for him, that he goes, I'm honored that you would write, but I'm afraid I don't sign autographs. And then he signed the bottom of the letter.
Now, presumably he was asked to sign a magazine or a shirt or something like that. But instead he signed the letter. And now the irony, of course, is the letter itself saying that I don't sign autographs is being auctioned off as an autograph. So
how crazy is that?
Now the starting bid is $1,000. Brett, I don't know. That's $500 each. You think we should go in for it?
I'm just considering it. I love this. People talk about the fact that they know it's Steve Jobs. It's not a fake because I'm sure there are handwriting experts, right? That could verify this, but he always did it in all lowercase on there. Anyway, just an interesting little piece.
Yeah, I've seen similar Steve Jobs autographed items go for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and somebody thought this one might be $25,000. We'll be curious to see how much it goes for. So, but I don't think we'll be getting ourselves.
Yeah, I'll just take a picture.
There you go.
So you had some great links this week to several things about the upcoming, probably soon to be released iOS 15. Now, you and I have talked about this several times over the last few weeks, Jeff, and I personally anticipate we could even see it maybe very early September, like maybe even from a month today. I have no inside info, of course, on this or anything, and we don't know when Apple's going to release it. But I've been running the beta version of iOS 15 or iPadOS 15 on my iPad, and I have just been very impressed at how smooth things keep getting. I think we're on the beta 2 or 3. And in fact, even my battery life is improving. And we typically see that as the betas improve. And it's just everything is working the way that it's still a few bugs here and there. But one of the first things that you linked to was this excellent article, of course, anything on Mac Stories, and of course, anything by John Voorhees, huge fan, that something that you and I have mentioned about the quick note option. And I got to tell you, the only reason that I am not using this exclusively right now is only because it doesn't yet sync to the iPhone, and I haven't upgraded my iPhone to iOS 15. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
but on the iPad,
whenever they're both
this
running
quick
the same
note is
operating
great.
system this fall, it will sync across. Yeah,
absolutely, and even to my Mac, because I'm already using the Notes app on my iPhone and my iPad and even my Mac. It is, we've talked about some of the note-taking apps, and you and I love a bunch of different note-taking apps. Good Notes and Notability and, even OneNote and Evernote and how they synchronize to everything. I just continue to go back to the default iOS Notes app because it works so well. And I know it sounds like a tiny improvement, this quick note for iPad, but I think it's going to be something I will absolutely use every single minute of the day. And you linked to this great article by John Voorhees.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I am not running the betas because I use my iPhone and my iPad to get too much work done. I can't risk the battery hit and the crashing and stuff like that. But I have been reading these reviews because we are probably getting close enough. I think we're within a month or two away that people, we're starting to see what these features are going to really look like when they're out. John Voorhees, he's a former attorney for a big law firm in Illinois. So he like many attorneys, he writes good detailed articles, and he does a great job of going through all the features of and I'm just really looking forward to quick notes because again, this is the one where you can just tap in the corner of the screen and drag up. Even works on a Mac, and you can quickly quickly create a note, which, I'm very digital, Brett, but the one thing I do have right here on my desk, because I always just have like a legal pad with a pen, because sometimes you need to jot something down quickly, and you just jump for the quickest thing there. But on the iPad, and the great use of this is in Safari. If you're looking at a web page doing some research on something and you see something interesting, you can just select some text, and very quickly, just by going up from the corner, you can add that text to a note, and then it'll even return the next time you go to that web page. It'll highlight the same text again. It just looks like a great way to capture key information quickly. And I was very encouraged by John saying that it seems to work so well for him. I suspect that this will be a big part of my workflow when this comes out pretty soon.
Right. And I'm complete agreement with that. I think it will become part of your workflow along with many, many others. And I continue to talk about it just because I think we're going to see, especially for us, in a professional situation, not just specifically legal, but, just exactly what you said, Jeff. People just need a quick way to jot something down. Yeah, I still carry a little field notes, a little notebook and stuff. And, like all good lawyers have a yellow legal pad next to the desk. But just being able to capture this, because the idea, I keep telling people, even if I write it on a piece of paper with a ballpoint pen, I got to remember where that is. Or maybe I'll take a picture of it, right? In other words, I like to know that I can have access to those notes in other places. And again, that just goes back to what I said earlier about using the notes, syncing the notes. But the other great thing, and John does a great job of talking about it here, which I hadn't even started using, but it is mind-blowing, truly. I can pull up a quick note when I'm looking at an article on Safari. I can highlight the text, which I have always done. I highlight the text and I hit copy, right? Then I go to my Notes app or OneNote and I paste the text. Now I don't have to. When I highlight the text in Safari on iPadOS 15, I'm using the beta there. I highlight the text, and there is an option in what they call the edit menu there to do create or add to Quick Note. And it puts it, if you can see this right here, it puts the link, and it also captures the text that you have.
Yeah, so not just the text, but also where you got it. And, think about if you're planning a vacation and you're reading like 20, 30 different websites, and you're like, I want to visit this place and this place. Just as you go along and see little snippets that are interesting to you, grab them, throw them to the Quick Note, and then when you're all done, you've got a great little list with links that you can go back and read again to get more information. It looks really useful.
Plus, in the Notes app, if you go back to it, you can tap the link and it takes you right back. It opens up that page, and it can even go back to the text that you highlighted. It's really just good. I mean, in my mind, this is just one of the first iterations of this. Again, like we always see, Apple's going to continue to improve it. And then John did a great job of listing some of these other apps that will integrate with it as well. So like he's got a couple of RSS feeds on here, Microsoft Edge, other browsers, and even GoodNotes on there. I'm just really, really excited. Of course, plus all of the basic Apple apps on there as well. So yeah, it's just exciting. And John does a great job in this article that you linked to today. So highly recommend that. So continuing with iOS 15 improvements, another article that you linked to was this from Mac Rumors. And this is all of the new features available in the Find My service. And we used to call it Find My iPhone, right? But then it expanded to all the devices.
Right.
So what's new with Find My and iOS 15?
Yeah, there are just so many great features in here. Find Mine started so simple, and it's going to get so much better this fall. One of the changes that Julie Clover describes is live locations. Right now, if you search for someone else's, I'll give you a good example. I'm going to the store to get a whole bunch of like groceries and stuff, and my wife is tracking me because as I get close to home, she'll come out and help me unload and stuff like that. Right now, when you find where somebody else is that's in your family that you've given permissions, of course, this is all private, but you have to give permissions, but it only updates every couple of minutes. And so many times, I'll be pulling in and she says, hey, it still says that you're over there on Magazine Street or whatever. It's like, oh no, it doesn't update. But this fall, it will update live. So you could actually follow someone and see exactly where they are. So that makes it more useful. One of the original things for Find My was to find a lost device. Like you said, it used to be called Find My iPhone. And they've updated this in a couple different ways. One is it can find devices that are turned off. Pause on this for a second. This is interesting. The iPhone is off. So you would think, how could it communicate with anyone else as to where the iPhone is? And yet there's still a little bit of power is being used for the Bluetooth radio or whatever it is, so that if your iPhone is turned off or the battery has died and it's sitting somewhere else, if somebody else happens to, pass by it and it gets picked up its location, you can still find out where it is. That in itself is going to help a lot of people that otherwise would have thought they could never find the device if it was just lost. And then another new feature is, let's say it goes to the next level and it gets stolen. Then, I bet what is the bad guy going to do? They're going to try to erase the iPhone, right? They're going to use the key combinations or hook it up to a computer to erase it. But somehow, even though the device has been erased, it still remembers that it's your device and it will still let you know. So, again, once the bad guys have it, you might want to get the police involved as opposed to trying to find it yourself. But at least you'll have a sense of where it is, and that's a cool little feature. So, those are some big, examples of big improvements coming.
I like this. Yeah. Just on that last one real quick. I love this. Apparently on that, which I think is huge, just like you're pointing out, but it says to prevent someone from being tricked into purchasing a device that's tied to your account, the hello screen. So if the thief takes it, tries to erase it, the hello screen now will tell the person that the device is locked, it's locatable using Find Mine, and it's the property of someone else. I just love that, right? It's like, no, there's no, you can't argue that you didn't know this was stolen because it's going to tell you on the front screen now.
And of course, the real hope is as the bad guys learn about this, they'll decide it's just not even worth stealing someone's iPhone.
It's not worth it.
Because I'm not going to be able to sell it for the reasons you just described. And so if it has that deterrent effect, well, then maybe someone's less likely as you're walking through an airport to reach in your pocket and pull out your iPhones. That's great. Some other ones, I'm not sure how useful they'll be, but it's interesting they're doing them. One addition is separation alerts. And the idea is that you can turn it on. This is optional, but you could say, if I left my iPad behind, let me know if meaning either my Apple Watch, my iPhone, notices that I'm too far away from my iPad. I don't think I want to use this because sometimes I think we all do want to leave our devices behind. But nevertheless, there could be a time like maybe I'm going to be traveling, I'm going through the airport today, and the one thing I want to make sure is that I did not leave the iPad in the seat back of the seat in front of me. And so maybe for the day I'll turn on separation alerts. So there can be times when this can be useful. And I've seen third parties offers this feature before, but because it wasn't baked into the operating system, it wasn't going to work all the time. This would work all the time. So I like this one. And there are some other improvements, there too, improvements on the AirPods and stuff like that. Right now, if I've had this happen before, I'm home. Where are my AirPods? And I look and see, and currently it will say, oh, where your AirPods were last seen on your office desk 6 hours ago. And I'm like, oh, that's right.
That's
I must
not
have
helpful.
left them on my desk. But that's still just telling me 6 hours ago. Now it'll say, not only were they there 6 hours ago, but somebody like walked by your door, even though the door was locked, and their iPhone noticed your AirPods in there. And so it's all anonymous, of course. No one knows what's happening, but it'll say, not only were they there 6 hours ago, I can actually tell you that they were there as of 5 minutes ago. And you're like, oh, well, now I know exactly where they are.
That's helpful.
So that'll be helpful. So many improvements, but the idea is Apple has really figured out everything you can do to make the service better, more useful. They're adding widgets for it. It's a big boost to Find My. I'm really looking forward to it.
To me, the widget option, Jeff, that's huge, along with that live tracking that you said at the very beginning, because exactly like with your family, like if my wife, especially if I'm driving, right, or coming back from the airport, my wife
too,
just wants to know, like, what time I'm coming home to stay up or whatever the case may be. we use this all the time, but I do that. I have to like go into the Find My app, and I have to sit there and wait for the little circle to update, and it, you know, finds all the folks. In fact, I even use it for my mother, you know, who's about 18 hours away from me. But it's like, it's a good way just that I can know that I can track her if I need to. But the fact that it's going to be live updates now, along with a widget that I can access and put even on my home screen, I am very, very excited about that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Now, I wonder if the widget updates live, because Apple tries to keep widgets to not use much power. We'll have to see. But even so, it'll give you indicators. I mean, suffice it to say, they have a team that have thought of what are all the ways we can make it better. And it seems like they've done like a whole bunch of them this fall. So bravo.
Inevitably,
can't wait.
Inevitably, anywhere that I go and I speak, and I'm sure it's got to be the same with you too, Jeff, there will always be people that have Find My stories, right? They left something in a plane, they lost their iPhone, it was stolen, and they were able to retrieve it, or, you know, there was usually a happy ending typically, or they can at least know what happened to it. And the fact that Apple is continuing to improve this on multiple levels is very exciting on there. So good article that you linked to there. And Julie does a great job of kind of walking through all of that as well. So then the last thing we wanted to talk about with updates in iOS 15 is it's related to iOS 15, right? Maybe it's a little bit separate, but they are betas of updated software for the AirPods Pro, which you can see I'm a huge fan. In fact, I will tell you, this week I had to fly in an airplane, and I'm late to the game on like noise canceling. You know, I never had the Bose or the Sony or anything like that. So a lot of people are going to be like, hey, we've been doing this for years. But having these AirPods Pro,
with the noise cancellation, yeah.
I have to tell, it changed the way I looked at being in a plane. Like when I turned it on, it was like I was on my own little cocoon, and it was beautiful. Although I could still hear announcements, which would surprise me. But then when I turned it off, or I went into what they call the transparency mode, my first realization was, oh my goodness, how much noise is going on inside those planes. I just never realized it, I guess, because I was used to it. Anyway, just to let everyone know, I don't think what we've already talked about many times, we're huge fans of the AirPods Pro, even at the price point that they're at. But they're getting an update in what's called the conversation boost.
Yeah, and it sort of relates to what you were talking about. You know how you just said, Brett, it was you're on the plane and the white noise is being blocked. But if an announcement comes on, you're still hearing it. Now, how does that work? It's because it's not blocking everything. It's trying to be intelligent on what it allows through and blocks. And so Apple is thinking, well, since we already have the ability to discriminate between sounds and to selectively let sounds through or not let sounds through, what's the next level we can take this to? And Apple's had a feature for a while now that works with the regular iPhones called Live Listen. And the idea is if somebody is hard of hearing, that let's just say they're, you know, a bunch of people are watching television together, but one person in your group can't hear it as well as other folks. They can take their iPhone and put it close to the speaker of the television, and they can wear their AirPods, and the AirPods sort of act as sort of a remote listening device that they will hear what the iPhone is hearing, and you can turn the volume up selectively. So that's one way, and this is already existing now. That's called Live Listen. What Apple's coming out with this sometime soon, presumably this fall, is that if the AirPods, because they can sort of sense things around you, if it senses that somebody is speaking directly in front of you, it will boost the sound of their voice. Whereas if there's people to the side, to the left or right, it won't do the same for them. And the idea is that if you're having hearing difficulties, which as we get older, all of us, you know, it's all of us, perhaps all of us are going to be there. It improves your ability to hear the person directly in front of you and lessens the ability to hear the people that are more, to the sides. Great, for people that have hearing issues, this is great. But even more than that, I mean, it just shows that Apple is taking a technology and thinking, how do we take it to the next level? What more could we do with this that could be useful? And so even if this particular feature is only useful for a smaller percentage of the population, the idea that Apple is taking its technology and finding new ways to do things with it, much like what we talked about with Find My a few minutes ago, this is very impressive and encouraging.
I would just tell you as a follow-up to the plane, the thing that I also like so much about it, and I'm sure, again, this is in many other systems that are noise-canceling headphones as well, but I could leave these AirPods Pro in my ears, and if you click and squeeze for about a second or so on the AirPods Pro, it'll switch you from the noise cancellation to what they call the transparency mode. And just having that capability, I found that I just left the AirPods in my ear most of the time. Maybe I looked like a really crazy nerd walking through the airport. But if I knew that I wanted to hear things around me, listen for announcements, I would go into transparency mode.
Right.
But if I knew that I wanted to sit and I've got several minutes, I just want to sit and kind of have some quiet and cut out all the noise, I would go into that noise cancellation mode. And just having that capability to go back and forth really was so helpful. And so when I saw this story that you linked to today, I'm even more excited about this. And this is beta that we're talking about. In fact, it says here the official version of the software update to the AirPods Pro will probably launch alongside iOS 15 when it happens. But there's already several folks, I think they have a link here to like a Reddit thread where people have been testing this and they just are talking about it is fantastic. Like, it's amazing how well this works. So good stuff on that as well.
Yeah, great.
Couple of bonus things that you linked to. I thought this was great. We've talked about carrot weather, I think, or I know we've mentioned it.
Absolutely.
Just because it's one of the the developer
it's a great weather
recently.
app, yeah.
It is, and it's funny. I used to think there's so many weather apps out there, and a lot of us have used Dark Sky before, and of course now that's an Apple. Apple acquired it. I guess it was that good. I mean, there's so many weather apps out there, and you had another one. What was the one you did not too long ago, Jeff? Weather Tracker or
it wasn't Weatherline. Yeah, I've got it on my phone here. I forget.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. Yeah.
And so Carrot Weather, a lot of people get upset because it is a subscription based. But after reading this article that is basically an interview with the developer, right? Apple posted it and you linked to it. And this is great. The developer is going through why he developed it. Apparently he's a very soft-spoken kind of an engineer or a screenwriter, and he kind of fell into this carrot weather. You can explain why I think that's so interesting and what he does,
there's
Jeff.
So many aspects. First of all, the one that I mentioned the other day was Weather Strip, but back to carrot weather.
Thank you.
Brian Mueller is a developer who's interviewed here, and there's a number of things about this article I love. First of all, he is not some big computer programmer he's making lots of money now off a very popular app, but he didn't come from a computer programming. He was a screenwriter, and he just thought it would be fun to have an app. And so he first decided, let me read up about reading apps, about creating apps. He got himself a book, and he's like, I just want to be able to understand the lingo so I could speak intelligently to an app designer who I hire. But after reading the book, he's like, you know what? I could do this too. And so the idea is that if Brian could do it, any of us could do it. So that's one fun thing. Another fun thing about this article is he describes the process that when the app first came out, it was sort of a shtick. The idea was, it's sort of like, imagine, HAL 9000 from that movie, or maybe a better analogy is if you played the Portal video game, but like a computer AI that's sort of sarcastic, that has an attitude, that doesn't actually like you. It just puts up with you. His shtick was, you're getting the weather from something that will insult you. And how many people would buy an app that insults you? It seems silly, and it almost seems like just a gimmick. And at the beginning it was, but he says that as he had the app out there, more people liked the interface and asked him for improvements, like real weather improvements, things that you would just want to know from a weather app. And so as he's improved the app over the time, the shtick of the app being funny, it's still there, and it's still what makes the app lovable. But frankly, I love the app, even if you took all that stuff out of it, just because it has a fantastic interface, it has all the information I want. So listening to him describe the process, it's just a good story. So I recommend that you read this one just for a good story that, and it's so easy to identify, because any of us could imagine, going down a rabbit hole one weekend of, what if I read about how to build a program, and next thing you know, you're programming, and it's a great story.
I like the app usually refers to humans as meat bags.
Correct.
So it's like, hey, meat bags. There's a star shining in the sky behind the clouds. I got to tell you, there is a free version. So if anybody just wants to go and see it, you can get it for free and you can use it. Some of the capabilities are limited in the fact that you don't get to choose, where your forecasts come from. But I have been using it, and I would tell you on my Apple Watch, and he talks a little bit about this as the developer in doing this. I used to have the default weather app as part of my complications on my watch face. But to your point, you were saying, Jeff, I think the carrot version of that is even better. I love it. It just, I can look at it and glance at it and see exactly what I want to know about the weather. So anyway, you can tell we're fans.
He mentions that in the article, in the interview, that he describes that when he decided to bring carrot weather to the Apple Watch, that was one of the first times that he turned the corner between just having a funny app and an app that was really useful. And so many people downloaded it for the utility that you just described of being, I think, the best Apple Watch weather app, that it then went back to the iPhone app and started to make it better as well. But I agree, it's the one and only app that I use for on my Apple Watch. If I just want to glance down and see the current temperature, the feels like, how long is it going to be before it next rains, all those sorts of things. It works really well. You don't have to pay. The free version gives you a lot of features, but if you want more detailed information, you can get it. Let me say one more thing about the humor of carrot weather is that
so good.
It has funny messages in it, and they are so timely. I have had times, I don't know how he does it, but like something will happen in the news and 30 minutes later, a joke about that event will be on my iPhone. I'm like, he must be constantly writing these jokes and pushing them down to the app. And it just brings a smile to your day.
It does.
And, anything that can make you smile a little bit adds something to your day. I love it.
And I will say there are many weather apps, and Jeff and I use quite a number, but one of the reasons that we're talking about this, and Jeff linked to it, is the developer just won an Apple Design Award. So that's one of the reasons that he's in. Yeah, absolutely. Here it says, it says, I'm only bringing out the sun so I can blind you with it. And another one says, rain starting in 15 minutes. Have fun with that, meatbag. I love that. Okay, good stuff. I know we've been focused on that. Another bonus that I loved, you always have such a fun video. I don't know how you find them all the time, Jeff, but this is a great little video. It's called Shot on iPhone, which is kind of a series that Apple has been doing, right? And one of the latest ones that they just came out with was one called Film Techniques. And this is a brilliant little video. If you're interested in doing any kind of videoing with it, I think it's like 3 techniques, right, that they go through on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're showing them right now. If anyone's watching the video, one is sort of a forced perspective, so it makes it look like a child is really big and an adult is really small. And then another one is just sort of a cool glitter effect that they did by dropping an iPhone and filming in slow motion. But the net effect,
no equipment.
It's as if you were using some incredibly sophisticated rigging technique to have this smooth transition. Right. And there's another one in there too that has to do with lights. Whether you do these specific things in your next home video or just looking at these reminds you that all it takes is creativity to come up with some cool special effect. You don't have to have the most expensive, latest gear. You just have to be clever. And that's what I love about it.
I'm so glad you linked to this because so they're doing this lovely, interesting little technique, if you can see it here, with this light on the lady's face. First of all, it's blue light, which they did by taking like a headlamp and putting blue painter's tape over it. Mm-hmm. And then you can see right here, they taped it to a bicycle wheel. So it goes around it. Anyway, you have to watch the video, but it's just great. Thanks for linking to that because I always love learning about some of the things that you can really do on the tips, which is why I wanted to have a tip that I just I landed on this week, I think. I've known about live photos for a while, and if you're not familiar with it, you probably have already encountered it and maybe just didn't know what it was. I think they've been around since iOS 11 or something, Jeff. I mean, it's been a while. They've had this idea of live photos, and what it is that we all know about taking a picture, but if you turn on live photos, basically, the iPhone records about a second and a half before you actually hit the shutter button, if that makes sense. In other words, it's a very, very short, I guess a video for lack of a better way, but it's not a full video.
Yeah, it's a video that's just around the iPhone so that you're looking at a picture and they say that's cool. But if you hold down on the picture, you can actually see the person moving around and hear a little bit about it. And what a great way to help bring back a memory. I always call it the Harry Potter technique because it reminds me of the Harry Potter movie where they're holding up the pictures and people are moving around in the picture.
Oh, that's great. I'd never thought of it that way. You're right. Like when they hold the newspaper up. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what it's going to be known in my household from now on. I never thought of it that way, Jeff. That's brilliant. It's this little tiny circle symbol up there. I mean, you can go, I'll have a link in the show notes here where you can go and look at it. But not only is live photos great, that wasn't actually my tip, although I find many people just don't even know it's on, or frankly, like with my mother, she always has it on and doesn't even know how to turn it off and doesn't even realize it. So every picture she sends to me is bigger. And what I like about it is that I can tap and hold it exactly the way you described it and see what was happening, like a second before. And it's amazing how much it captures. However, the tip that I wanted to share is that if you turn on live photos and you take a live photo, by the way, when you look at it, you can just look at it as a regular picture. But if you tap and hold, it does the animation or the 1 second before, just like what you said, Jeff. But if you go into a photo and you just basically scroll up a little bit on that live photo, you will find some photo effects. Now, I think in the earlier versions, it may have been a drop down under the live photo if it says that it's a live photo. But on the newer versions, you can see right here that you can tap and scroll up and you have these, I think it's about 4 options. You can do the live photo, which is the default. You can do a loop, which will basically just loop that 2 seconds or whatever it is, or that second and a half. You can do a bounce, which I think it goes forward and then it'll go backwards, right? Forward, backwards, forward, backwards. And then one they don't show here, which is really what I was interested in, is what they call the long exposure. Now, many people may not know, if you don't know photography, like I don't really know photography all that much, but here, let me just see if I can bring up a picture to show you the way that I think about it. If you're doing something like taking a picture of a waterfall, maybe that's one of the better ways.
That's the stereotypical example is a waterfall. Yeah.
Let me bring it up. Or a lot of people see these pictures of like the traffic in downtown New York or something like that, right? And if you take a picture, of course, you're just going to get a snapshot of what it looks like. Let me see if one of these pictures comes up here that I can show. But if you go into these options and you take it as a live photo, go into the options, that long exposure will basically then smooth out either the waterfall so that it has that kind of surreal looking effect on it, or the traffic will just be like long streaks of light. You kind of have to see it. I know I'm not doing the best job of explaining it, but if you go in, and I'll have some links in there that you can see, it just gives it a really neat effect that photographers have been using long exposure for a long time. They've just been having fancy equipment and they have to hold the shutter open for a long time. The iPhone doesn't necessarily do that, but you can get a long exposure photograph simply by taking a live photo and then going in and changing that option there. Just an incredible options, again, just that Apple continues to put into some of these aspects and tools on the photography there.
Yeah, it's a cool tip. It's useful on maybe 1 out of every 1,000 photographs you take. But when it's useful, when you're like, oh, what a great effect to simulate the shutter staying open. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
that's a good tip.
That's great.
So here's my tip for the week. So we were talking about we started today by talking about notes and the Notes app. And it occurred to me that there's just so many things that I do with the Notes app that I find so useful. I made a list of like 10 of them. And whether you want to do the same thing on your own iPhone, iPad, or whether something that I'm about to tell you gives you an idea for something that you might want to do, I'm just going to run through them quickly. So one of them is, I'm an attorney, and so I represent clients, and every matter that I do has a number associated with, this is client 123, and it's the third matter. So it's client matter 123-3. And I often need these numbers because I have to type it in for making a photocopy or for some other reason I need the number. And I use the Notes app just to have a central place of all of the file numbers that I'm currently using. So there may be, dozens on the list, but I have a central place to go. Common phone numbers. Of course, you have phone numbers in your contacts app, but if you find that you're often calling a whole bunch of people, just to have one central place, much like in the old days, your grandmother or your mom, your parents may have had like a paper list next to the phone on the wall back that would just have, back before people had speed dial to remind you of phone numbers. It's useful for that. Okay, here's a silly one that I have, but I have one for a talk to spouse list. So something will happen during the day. And it's like, oh, I want to talk to my wife about that. I'll just jot it down quickly.
You don't want to forget.
Often just a word or two. And so that way, maybe we're talking that night or the weekend. I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to mention to you this article I saw. And it just sort of reminds me of something that otherwise I might forget. List of movies and TV shows I want to watch. This one happens all the time. You're reading an article and someone says, hey, you might want to really watch this one. In fact, this happened recently. I was listening to a podcast with John Gruber, and he recommended a show that came out a number of years ago called, I think it's called The Night Watchman, if I remember correctly. And I'm watching it right now, and it's fantastic. But I just have a running list of those. So the next time I'm like, what movie should we watch or what TV show? I can look at my list and say, oh yeah, 6 months ago I said I might want want to check out this one. A packing list, that's an obvious one. The notes feature even has like, you can use a list function. So it puts little dots. So you can check things off. I mean, it's been so long since I've traveled. The next time I do, I better look at that packing list because I've forgotten how to pack. Another one is, and this is a useful one for when I'm going to a meeting, names and faces. And so let's say I'm going to a meeting with a bunch of attorneys, and I know these people from talking on the phone, but maybe I haven't seen them in real life a lot. And so what I'll do is a notes doesn't just have text in it. You can put anything in it. And so what I'll do is I'll put like, John Doe, and I'll go to his website and I'll just like take a little screenshot and crop into a picture of his face and put his face under it. And maybe I'll put John Doe dash, the XYZ company, and then the next one, and then the next one. And so that way, whether I'm on the plane or I'm getting ready for the meeting, I can open up a single note and quickly see name, face. And that way it's in my brain. So when I see them in person, I'm like, of course you're John. And of course you're Larry. And it just, and it just gives you that little extra boost of confidence. I use it professionally, but I used to even use it for just a list of like the kids that were on my daughter's soccer team. And so that way, I can remember, oh, that's Sally that had the great goal there, and maybe jot down who Sally's parents are so I can congratulate them. Historical items I use for notes, things like addresses that I used to, every address that I used to have in the past. Sometimes you need that information. You're not going to necessarily remember the address of where you lived in college. Just stick it all in a note. And any other historical, people you've worked with, a list of your assistants over time, the cars you used to own, past presents you've given somebody, so you don't give them the same thing again. Just any of those historical things that you could remember them in your brain. But if you're like me, your brain is too busy worrying about the current things of today. It's harder to remember the things from before. My next list that I think is useful is called light bulbs. I have so many different light bulbs and different fixtures in my house. A light is out in a fixture in this room. What kind of light bulb is that? And of course,
you mean literal light bulbs?
I mean literally.
I was thinking it was like brain.
No, I'm literally in this room. I'm using 40 watt of a halogen, and this one is an LED. And I just like having a central place to look. But again, it's the same idea of I don't want to take my own brain space to remember all that nonsense. Two more quickly. One is recipes to try, whether it's, you're a cook or a chef or something like that. For me, I like to do cocktails. So I might be reading some recipe for some cocktail. I'll just, this is a quick notes feature perhaps in the future, but I'll, copy the recipe, stick it in there. And it may be 2 years before I go back to it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that recipe that uses some, Midori and orange. I don't even know what the ingredients are, just something like that. It's just a place to put it. And then, my last tip is not a specific idea for a list, but it's just use the pin feature for anything that's important. At the top, like my file numbers, I pin that at the very top. And also keep in mind that you don't always have to use the Notes app because, for example, my password manager, 1Password, has its own built-in notes feature for secure things. And although, frankly, nobody really has access to my iPhone nowadays, my kids have got their own phone. The days of them borrowing my phone are really over. But if you just want something that's even more secure than the already secure regular Notes app, you can put in a special note section of an app like 1Password. And I put things like, medications that I take or, medical conditions or, keeping track of, my salary as it's changed over the years or, gift ideas from my spouse. I wouldn't want her to be using my phone and see it, by mistake. So not all of your notes need to literally go in the Notes app, although frankly, the useful ones do. So hopefully one of those ideas sparks an idea for someone listening to this,
so great.
Whether you do literally what I'm doing or I just made you think of something else. Just so many useful things to do with notes.
I love the pin a note because I'll be honest with you, I use this for like wine, we're out at a dinner or something like that. And I take a picture of that label. And so that it's in there, like if we really liked it, right? And we wanted to have anyway, it's such great tips. And again, these are all of the reasons why I love this Notes app. And now hopefully listeners will understand why we are so excited about, while we were talking about that quick note capability within the iPad, which John Voorhees, by the way, said on this article, right now it's not available on the iPhone. And he really breaks Apple over the coals on this, right? It's like, why would you not have that capability in the iPhone? Because everything that you and I were talking about just now is really on the iPhone. I can't imagine Apple is not going to bring it. Maybe not in this first iteration, but that's going to be coming. And I just think that that's for all the reasons you mentioned, Jeff, that would be a great idea on that.
Yeah, let's get the feature shipping first. And once the feature is out, then Apple can iterate on it and fix the problems and make it better.
Then we can improve it. Excellent. All right, my friend. Thank you as always. Great to talk with you, and we'll see you next week, Jeff.
Bye-bye, everybody.